Interesting. That goes to some synonyms for letting go. You run into letting go in the Buddha's teachings all the time. And some of the synonyms that you'll come across, you spoke about, releasing the mind from this prison. Some synonyms are loosening for letting go. So think of you're loosening your tie or loosening your belt. Releasing. Think of birds maybe releasing from a cage where they've been trapped. Emancipating. Maybe you have immigrated from a country that has an oppressive government. You're emancipated, or you can imagine somebody liberating. I think of my dad talking about when the American soldiers came to Germany and his refugee camp was liberated. Unbinding, right? Untying a hostage. You see it in a movie. They come and they rescue the hostage and untie them. Unbinding. Unshackling. Removing the heavy irons and walking to freedom. So letting go in Buddha's teachings is profound and important. And we're going to talk about that today. I asked a few friends the same question, and a lot of great conversations. And one person said something that was very present in his life. It means at that moment in his life, it meant letting go of the judgments of others. And he went on to say that people will think things about you based on externalities, how you look, your age, your sex, what you've done. But who you are inside is different, and which matters more. And the freedom of letting go is knowing who you are and letting go of how others may see you. This was the train of his thinking at that moment. This idea of letting go was applying to him. And that reminds me of a quote that a friend who she used to teach yoga to, I think it was either veterans or at an addict recovery center. But anyway, something someone shared with her is, what you think of me is none of my business. What you think of me is none of my business. So letting go of how others may see you. Although this person who was thinking about this pointed out that humans are the only species who can hurt each other without physical violence. We can hurt each other, wound each other deeply without even laying a finger. Right? There's a physical pain associated with it. And this, as meditators, this is actually something that we are looking for. We're on the search to see, how does it feel when somebody says something hurtful and it lands on this body? How does it feel? Usually we're going to run away from that sensation, right? That's the training we've had, is that you run away. But can you pause for a moment and see what is that physical pain associated with the mental hurt that's been dished out? You can do it right now. You can pull up just quickly a grief, some grief in your life. We all have grief. So thinking now of, maybe somebody we've lost. We all lose people. And when you think of the grief of having lost that person, sense in, is there a sensation in the body? Is that pain physical? Can you feel that? Like often it's a tightening of the muscles around the heart. Often it's a a squeezing in the throat or some kind of holding in the stomach. Often there's like a burning in the eyes. So this is our physical body is engaging with the mind when there's a painful thought. And so the hopeful message is if there's this physical pain manifesting when the mind is engaged in certain thoughts, this means we can free ourselves from that pain by disengaging the mind skillfully disengaging the mind. So what are we letting go of? What are we supposed to let go of? Let's ask Buddha, what are we supposed to let go of? It's a murky, I know what letting go means, but he's so helpful. He's always putting out lists for us that we can think about things more carefully. And there's a quote from one of his teachings in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's the middle-length discourses. That's very helpful. He says, I'll read it to you. He says, bhikkhus means monks, when ignorance is abandoned and true knowledge has arisen, then with the fading away of ignorance and the arising of true knowledge, he no longer clings to sensual pleasures, no longer clings to views, no longer clings to rules and observances, and no longer clings to a doctrine of self. When he does not cling, he is not agitated. When he is not agitated, he attains nibbana. Nibbana being ultimate release, ultimate freedom. So when ignorance is abandoned and true knowledge has arisen, it means no longer clinging to these four things. Sensual pleasures, meaning the pleasant things that we bring in with our five senses. Views, rules, and a doctrine of self. So what does that mean? We can look at each one, and I can give you an example that might be helpful. So again, letting go of sensual pleasures, letting go of things that please us in our five senses. Like, why would you want to let go? Why in the world? It's a beautiful sunny day. Let's enjoy this sunshine. Oh, it feels good on the body. There's a nuance there. And Buddha always stressed this idea of walking this middle way. So an example would be the difference between enjoying a slice of cake, right? It's delicious. It's very satisfying. Then it's kind of coming to an end. And you're like, oh, I better slow down and savor it. Enjoy the last bits. That's kind of like in my mind, in my view, it's a healthy desire to enjoy something. But you've become attached. There's this notion of being attached and clinging when the obsessive nature wraps itself around your mind. When there's this fear, maybe with the cake, it's this fear of overindulgence, or it's an avoidance, maybe not having it there in the first place, because standing at the counter, kind of slicing off one little slice after another, right? You're going from bliss and then despair when it's gone. And you're kind of chasing happiness with each bite. But then each bite ends, so then it's over. So then you try for more. So knowing that these sensual pleasures always come to an end, the sunny day, will turn into a cloudy day. Knowing the ends, because all sense pleasures end, this is how you let go. This is how you let go. You enjoy it while it lasts, and you let go when it's over. So that's sensual pleasures, letting go. Letting go of attachment too. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Letting go of your attachment, right? It's crossing that line, being mindful so as not to cross that line and have the mind be grasping to whatever it is. Letting go, the next one, letting go of attachment to views. An example of this one would be, for example, I myself have a view that Amazon is, has brought about the demise of local bookstores, and I happen to be someone who loves local bookstores, love. And so I read that, the bookstores have to charge $26 for a new hardback, but Amazon sells them for $9.99 because they have so much income coming in from their cloud services that it's like a loss leader for them. They're losing money. I think the book costs $14, so they're losing $4 every book they sell, but they don't care because it builds goodwill, and we all think they're amazing, and so we don't go to our local bookstore, and then our local bookstores have been closing. So based on that, I have this view that I don't think Amazon is very good. And it's okay to have this view. I mean, it's very important for us to have our viewpoints. But I'll notice when the mind crosses the line into suffering, when, for example, I'll see the Amazon truck passing by my neighborhood, and I tumble down the rabbit hole of negative thinking, which oftentimes will even include the driver of the Amazon truck, who doesn't even care about Amazon. He just wants to bring home some money. But there's this thought process, Amazon is so bad, and they're really destroying everything, and they're taking over the world, and everybody is going to die. However that thought process goes, that's when the mind has become attached. That's when freedom has been lost. The viewpoint was okay, but then the attachment to the viewpoint starts to bring about suffering. The third item to let go of, rules and observances, he calls them. An example of that is, I think of my grandpa, who had an amazing homestead farm and had lots and lots of rules based on his experience working with his land. I don't even know where to begin, but just these tiny nuances that he would observe, and his plants could be beautiful, and his animals were well loved and well cared for. Everything was just so carefully thought through, and he had developed a lot of rules over many years of farming, which is helpful. It makes life good for him and for us. But one example I remember when I would stay with them, he had this rule in his mind that the gas on the stove the flame shouldn't be too high, because that would waste gas. And so if you're boiling a pot of tea, he said you only needed the flame to be within the circumference of the pot. It doesn't need to be going outside the edge of the pot. That seems like a reasonable rule, except we'd be sitting there and my grandma would put the pot on the stove, and I would see his agitation starting. You could see it in the set of the jaw. And it's sort of like it would turn into anger, right? Because why aren't you following this important rule? And you could see the suffering. And then you also could see that, once the dialogue started, the suffering spread out to the rest of the people at the table. So the rules were so helpful until the attachment, right? Can he let go and just let that few molecules of gas be wasted? And the last one, the doctrine of self. We spoke about this idea of self a few weeks ago. And it's a complicated one, but an example of that might be, people who are responsible. I'm married to one of these. It's a wonderful trait to have. Responsibility is important to you. And it helps a lot of other people. But this notion, this doctrine of self, we spoke about that, it's when you label yourself, I'm a responsible person. You're not labeling it for the world, but inside of you there's something that says, I'm a responsible person. And when you become overly attached to this identity of being the responsible person, the suffering starts. For example, you make a plan to meet up with someone tomorrow. You don't sleep well. You wake up, you have a cold, something, you don't feel well, and you need to cancel. But this doctrine of self is saying, I'm a responsible person. I do what I say I'm going to do. And that attachment makes the whole process of canceling very painful for you. You might not even cancel. You may just push through and feel even worse. This idea of being caught in the story of self, being overly attached to that, really will prevent you from responding to the reality of the present moment that you happen to be in at any time. So the doctrine of self, letting go of our attachment to that. So these are the 4 things that Buddha suggests we let go of. Actually, he did more than suggest. He really said you have to let go. Not that we don't have views, we don't have rules, we don't have desires, but that we don't grasp and cling and become slaves, become prisoners in our own mind. I think I'll finish with a story from life, kind of a cute story. An example of letting go. We got a dog 7 years ago, and it turned out to be a high-energy dog. And we needed to train her off the leash because there's no amount of walking I can do to wear the dog out. And, you go to the forest and you get a 30-foot rope and, you let the dog learn the circumference of the rope. And then eventually, the dog gets to the end of the rope and they get yanked back. You have to let go of the rope, right? And you want to do this because you want the dog to be able to run freely. But there's fear, right? There's fear. Because who knows where she's going to go? And so at that moment, when that fear arises, you have to really accept the dog running away and never coming back. Like you have to be able to accept this as a possible outcome in order to let go of the rope. Otherwise, there's not enough tranquility inside to actually do it. And so, can you accept that reality? Not that accepting it means that you want it, not that accepting it means that that's going to make it happen, but can you accept it as a possibility? this, and that's similar to letting go. This idea of letting go of the rope of the dog is similar to letting go of these mental formations. Like, if I let go of needing to turn that flame down on that stove, can I let go of that? What is the possibility that might happen? What might happen if I were to let go of that? So with the dog, I'm glad to say, was able to let go of the rope, and she ran out of my sight quite often, especially in the beginning when she was young, and your heart drops into your stomach. But she always came back, luckily. And now we're very peaceful in the forest because I trusted and I let go. So it's this notion of dropping the rope. And it's actually a very helpful metaphor, one that Buddha actually shared, this idea of holding on to the rope. And it's maybe connected to a dog, or maybe it's connected to an anchor going over the side of the boat, and it's going fast and hard. And the more you hold on, the more you get burned. And if you can let go, the pain stops.